almost time for the big celebrations all across the county for 250 years. And if you stop and think about it, practically every town in Buffalo County has some kind of celebration that they've done for years, or maybe the last few years, or maybe they've done it with somebody else. Well, today we are going to have Kevin and Jean from the Gibbon Heritage Center that's going to tell us about It Started in a Grove. Now, what would have happened in a grove?
Well, first of all, the word grove is interesting. We don't use that word a lot these days. So I needed to look that up. And a grove is a small group of trees growing together without significant undergrowth, often creating a shaded area, a picnic grove. Now, theologian Martin Luther expanded that a little bit, and he called it a protected forest in which a deity was worshipped. The Soldiers' Free Homestead Colony had their first 4th of July celebration in a grove, and that grove was at the Boyd Ranch, 1871. It's not what we would call 4th of July today. It was a Sunday school group. Now what you need to kind of think about, 1871 for Gibbon it was just barely 3 months after the colonists arrived to settle the town. Very few of them had much when they got off the train. Of course, the first thing they saw, most of you know, was the bleak prairie, blackened by fire the week before. And yet 3 months later, they found themselves at the grove. At that time, there was no wagon bridge across a river or a ravine. There was not even a rod of graded road. Now, I do know that a rod is 16 and a half feet. I've had to learn that over the course of my research this past year. So, no graded roads, no public building, no church, one sod schoolhouse, not a mile of fence, no orchards, no tilled farms with herds of cattle, horses, or swine, no covered vehicle. Now, this part's important. Remember, the Boyd Ranch is a mile out of town, so no covered vehicle. There may have been one prairie schooner and only one single-seated buggy, perhaps one buckboard or lumber wagon drawn by a team of oxen. And back then, one team of oxen was owned by 2, 3, or even 4 farmers. 2 families would have owned 1 cow. They hadn't yet had farming to raise a crop. Only had 3 months here. They hadn't tilled the ground. So think about getting to the grove. Yet they did, and it was the Gibbon Sunday School under the direction of Superintendent Christopher Putnam, one of the colonists. And that, according to S.C. Bassett, was the first 4th of July celebration. Well, 1872, they were back in a grove, but this one was 4 miles east of Gibbon in Henry Dugdale's grove. There were 500 or so that attended that day. There was a picnic, there was singing, and giving praises to God. The Gibbon Sunday School, Wood River Union, District 1, and Wood River Station were all in attendance. Some of them carried banners, and it was quite an event. So when they got there, they marched into the grove where seats and swings had been made ready for them. Call to order was given by colonist Samuel B. Lowell, the prayer by Pastor Morse from the Methodist Episcopal Church, and they sang the national anthem and America with Professor Worley at the organ. This is not a portable keyboard. This is an organ. We have 3 old organs at the Heritage Center, and I'm telling you, they don't move. So how they got the organ there, I don't know, but it took determination. Following that, the Declaration of Independence was read by Reverend J.J. Place of the Baptist Church. And then they probably had their picnic lunch, for after that, colonist Reverend J.N. Allen gave the address. Now wait for the grand finale. 30 couples had a dance that lasted well into the morning. It doesn't tell us whether Professor Worley was at the organ until the wee hours of the morning, but the first dance was in 1872 in a grove. This was just 18 months following the Indians and the buffalo herds running freely over the area. Well, we'll fast forward to 1883, and the citizens put out a message, a notice that they wanted a mass meeting to consider the matter of celebrating the 4th of July. What became of the meeting, we don't know, except that they had a Sunday school picnic in Mr. Eddy's grove, and it was not as well attended. Now, part of the reason for that was that Shelton had a celebration that year, and that was reported that all the wagons were going right through Gibbon. It said Shelton word on the side, so they knew where they were going. And Mr. Bovee had a $10 gold piece stolen when someone overturned his drawer, probably due to the antics of the dozen or so drunken men in Shelton. But what Gibbon did have was a dance, and they hoped that everyone had a good opinion of Gibbon when they returned for the dance. Now, 1884, there was a notice in the paper that 4th of July would be in Kelsey's Grove. Well, we've gone from a mile west to 4 miles east, and now we're what they would have called at the time north of town. Kelsey's Grove would be, for a reference point, about a block east of where Casey's is today, and about a block and a half north. So they were making plans, and apparently other communities were too, because the Burlington and Missouri River Railroad offered half fare to stations along its line that were under 200 miles from the beginning there. So the notice was given that at Kelsey's Grove, starting early in the morning at sunrise, the national salute was fired. Again, the Declaration of Independence was read. There was a prayer, there were Sunday school recitations, music, and a basket dinner. The supper was at the Pacific House, and now we had fireworks before the grand ball at Davis Hall. S.C. Bassett was president of the day. 1885, the planning started early, and actually it started here in Kearney. Part of it. The officers of the Soldiers and Sailors Organization of Buffalo County met here in Kearney to make plans to hold a reunion for the soldiers. And they decided it would be in Gibbon on July 4th. So Gibbon was a center attraction that year. The soldiers were told, if you want to go early, tents will be set up. Your Gibbon comrades will entertain you until the 4th. That way, coming from a distance, they had plenty of time. The stores used the occasion to advertise. The 4th is coming, we have sales. So the stores capitalized. And as you might see, it says that there will be pretty young girls, nice young men, women, children, and soldiers. The GAR posts from Gibbon, Shelton, and Kearney were led by the Kearney Cornet Band and Drum Corps. The procession started on Church Street. Gibbon does not have Church Street. However, it was a nickname because there were a number of churches along 2nd Street. So they called it Church Street. And they marched to Kelsey's Grove, where there was the reading of the Declaration of Independence, music, and oration. But we really added something new this year. How many of you have been to a Calathumpian parade? Well, maybe you need to know what it is. You may have been to one. Calathumpian is a noisy, boisterous band or parade. Now, it's a term that's an Americanism, but the roots date back to early England in the 1800s. And the band instruments were crude noisemakers, pots, tin horns, and cowbells. They still have Calathumpians today, but they're a little more organized. So after the Calathumpian parade, there were races, foot races, wheelbarrow races, and tub races, and an eating contest. And then, of course, the grand ball was in the afternoon and the evening. Now, 1889, there's a notice of drinking red lemonade, climb the greased pole, and whoop her up. So again, the procession formed on Church Street. And once they got to the Grove, Reverend Beebe gave his address on why we celebrate. The games followed, and the cracker eating contest for the small boys was held. The contestants were put on the porch roof of the creamery. And the first to consume all 5 crackers was taken downtown and given a new suit of clothes. And little Johnny Nesbitt was the winner. The ladies' horseback riding winner got new shoes. We had fireworks and then the ball at Davis Hall, and 2,000 attended. By the next year, Mr. Kelsey had built a footbridge across the Wood River to help with things. That year, 1890, the fire department members all got new uniforms for the water fight that was held. forward to 1896, new events, new locations, and the new entry for the parade. The grand parade was going to include 100 tatterdemalions. You've all seen tatterdemalions, right? Wait till the tatterdemalions get to the Calathumpian, right? A tatterdemalion is a person wearing ragged, shredded, or disreputable clothing, like a ragamuffin. And they were led by the Harmony Band. Things were kind of wild and different, it seems to me, back early. The other new thing this year was that the oration was now in Davis Park. This was the first year of Davis Park. We no longer had to go to the Grove. The pig race, the way they described that in the paper was first catchy, keepy porky. They had a bicycle handicap road race, and the prizes were things that cyclists would appreciate, like quick repair tires. And then there were fireworks and another new location. The dance was now at the new Babcock Opera House. But this time they wanted people to be sure to know that the number 3 would be due in at 9 o'clock to bring all the Kearney celebrators back to town. 1898 still included the Declaration of Independence, still at Davis Park. And this, the park has been noted to be not surpassed by any in the state. It's still a wonderful park with some of the original trees. But we had a bicycle club now, and they had 1, 5, and 10-mile races at the track, which was a 1/3 mile long and 30 feet wide. The area of that track can still be seen if you look carefully in the southwest corner of Davis Park. They had the dance, and they estimated that 4,500 people were in town for the celebration. 1900, parade gave notice. Would be the greatest and most grotesque Calathumpian armies ever going through the streets. It'd be worth coming miles to see. They had a call put out for the ladies to participate this year, and they're even going to find them wagons to ride in and false faces, masks. They wanted old wagons, old buggies, old carriages, old horses, old mules, old cows and dogs, any curiosity you could find. And the worse they looked, the better. Strange parade to me. Now, this year was what I would say is the first mention of floats in a parade. The Cyclone store had a float. Mrs. Carson's Millinery had a patriotic cart drawn by Gertie Dalrymple's Shetland pony. Uncle Sam and the Goddess of Liberty also showed up. And D.P. Ashburn, who was at this time with the Fremont Creamery, had a mammoth kite flying over the area with a picture of a cow and the words, "Nebraska's mortgage lifter." Cows today are worth a lot of money. It might be a mortgage lifter if you're selling, not if you're buying. And of course, the grand ball at the Opera House. 1902, the celebration was in Kearney or Shelton. And, then 1904, Kearney had a, no, 1902, Kearney had a rousing celebration. So the ball was postponed to July 11th. In 1903, it was back in Gibbon, and people came on horseback, wagons, carriages, and by rail. They had a pie eating contest, they added a ball game, and the ball game was between Gibbon and Lowell. In 07, all it had was a never-before-seen fireworks display. So then, we'll put up the 1910 one, Kevin. If you look at the 1910 notice in the paper, you may not be able to tell. That picture at the top is upside down. It's Custer's Last Charge, which was a Wild West show, and they also had a balloon ascension. The following year, they made the decision, 4th of July. So following that, Grand Island had one, Kearney had one, Shelton had one, Kearney had 2 more. So for a while, Gibbon was not busy with the 4th of July. But in 1917, they tried something new. There were 12 cars, 2 of them with the band, and they drove around to 9 area towns trying to drum up business for the 4th of July and the Chautauqua. They were advertising, and this was their method, going out and doing that. Because of the war, they wanted to go back to patriotic events, and Helen Miller was the goddess of liberty. She was surrounded on the float by 13 girls representing the 13 original colonies, and they said that was the best rendition ever heard of the Declaration of Independence. There may be some here that would remember Helen Miller as Helen Galverson. This year, Marshall Ross appeared in appropriate costume on his magnificent horse, and he was the marshal of the day, something that he did many times over. But the efforts of those 12 cars was rewarded, for they had 5,000 to 6,000 in attendance at the celebration. By 1919, they were ready for a victory celebration. It had a slow start due to rain, but the fireworks and the dance happened. And then we'll move to 1924, which is just a simple program. But this year, the parade had a theme. I think we've left most of the Calathumpians and Tatterdemalions behind, because the theme of the parade was that the seasons of the year would be represented. In other words, each month had a theme. St. Patrick's Day, April showers, beginning school, District 8 took care of that, and Armistice Day. Now, what is really special to me about 1924 is the parade entry called the Boys of 61. This was a float put together by the GAR and the WRC, and riding on that float were comrades Watson, Gibson, and Holloway. And afterwards, Mr. Watson said it was the first 4th of July parade he had taken part in since he marched with the Union Army into Vicksburg on July 4th, 1863. after its surrender, 61 years previous. And I would add to that, that Sam Watson spent another year with the Union Army, and he was sent home in July of 1864 from Jackson, Mississippi, invalided, unable to walk, and he did not walk until the end of September of 1864. So that would have been a really special float. Sometimes, as we know, July 4th, it's on a Sunday, so they would change maybe to July 5th or sometimes July 3rd. 1926, it was on Monday. The 1927 celebration is one big celebration, and they had the William F. Lewis Stock Company. 1930, attendance was way down because the farmers were in the fields, many delays. 30s were beginning, the dirty 30s. And there were no public fireworks because they'd fallen into disrepute over the serious number of fatalities and accidents. 1932 is kind of cute. I think there are some of us, some people, or if you have dogs, that say, why can't they just wait till the 4th for fireworks? So I thought this was kind of cute. In 1937, they had the usual July 4th celebration. They also had, about a month, 6 weeks later, the Potato Festival. That was a big deal. So in 1938, there was no 4th of July because they chose to concentrate on the Potato Festival. And that was planned to honor the prominent place potatoes had in the community and the economy. They had many of the same type of events as the 4th of July, including the movie, the ball game, and the dance. But they added quite a number of Aggies exhibits that had monetary prizes. The Potato Festival lasted through 1941. So we're without July 4th for quite a few years, and I'm sure that Kearney and Shelton and Grand Island carried that. Even in 1943, and you know, the Warriors would change way of life in a lot of ways. The Gibbon Reporter encouraged readers to spend the 4th by buying war bonds. It will help to make the safest 4th in years if you do it the bond way, they said. So it was not until 1949 that the celebration was revived, and the usual activities, we finally slipped into what we call usual, I think. But a special note this year was the parade entry of Harry Debris and his horse. Well, back in 1894, when Harry was 11, he dressed his horse appropriately for the day in ribbons and rode him in his first parade. And since that time, if there was a parade, Harry Debris and his horse were in it. 1951, the Bradley Buck Post of the Legion had charge of the events, and they began the day by raising the flag at the park, followed by a 21-gun salute. They finished the day with taps and lowering the flag at sundown. The activities were the usual, with the addition of a tug-of-war contest and the Fuller Circus, which packed the grandstand. In 52, the dance was at Davis Park, so the Opera House was quiet. Now, in 1953, there was nothing because they couldn't come up with anything, and that's just the way they said it. You would just have a picnic in the park. In 1958, that was a really special 4th of July celebration. It was the grand opening of Gibbons Valley View Golf Course. And the 4th of July was the day it opened, and that's where you were encouraged to go for your picnic under the trees on the west side, spend the 4th at the golf course, and there was free play for everyone. So it wasn't until the next year that the celebration was actually back in Gibbon. And a new addition was the Lexington Plum Creekers performing their drill with their horses, and the addition of the barbecue by the feed mill and the turkey plant, where they cooked 1,500 pounds of beef and turkey and served 6,000 people. We've got some pictures of the 59 barbecue. 1960 was a carbon copy, pretty much, of the previous year's barbecue again. Now, what I do remember is, if you wanted to know when it was gonna rain, it would be the evening of July 3rd. It always did. Because what they did with the barbecue, they dug a deep hole, they wrapped the meat in foil, cooked it on coals, and tended it all night. So they were worried about whether the rain would put out the coals and the meat would get done. But in 1960, the fireworks were put on by Ed Pesick and crew, and the estimate for attendance in Gibbon for the 4th of July was 7,500 that year. The following year, the crowd for the day was 6,000 to 8,000. And 1962, we added something special, a 4th of July Queen contest. And what they did was, one girl from each grade, 8th through 12th grades, was selected to be a candidate for queen. Jars were put around town and you voted with your money, and whoever raised the most money was the queen for the day. They used the jars, the money, as a means of offsetting some of the cost of the celebration. Still had the barbecue that year, and added a carnival and a micro-midget auto race. The fireworks was the climax of the evening, along with a dance at the Opera House. 9,000 celebrated that day, they said. Now, 1963, I don't know how well you can see it, but it's a helicopter. And in addition to the queens in the usual parade, there were helicopter rides throughout the day. And it was done by Panhandle Aviation, which was established by Duncan Aviation out of Omaha and Lincoln to support the Minutemen missile sites across the Midwest. And it said the early 1960s saw intense military aviation activity in Nebraska. Along with my cousin and my granddad, I was in that helicopter. It's a bubble. There's no doors on the side, it's open air. It was especially memorable. I enjoyed it tremendously. It only cost $5 a piece to ride, and up and over Gibbon. It was One of my best memories of the 4th of July. Now, another new change in 63. The dance is now at Franzen's grain bin. There's a reason for that. The Opera House burned in October of 1962. So it was no more. Well, everything else stayed the same for a couple years, and we come to July 4th, 1966. The usual celebration is planned, the Queen, the parades, the picnics, the races, the carnival, the fireworks. The dance was no longer on the schedule. But before the 4th arrived, tragedy struck the community. When on July 2nd, 8th grade Queen candidate Verla Finke drowned at the sand pit at what is now known as Windmill Park. She and a friend were floating across the lake on an inner tube and it blew out. Malin Howard, who was on the bank, swam in to rescue the girls, but when he got to the location, only one was there, still afloat. Verla was not to be seen, and her body was not recovered until the next day on July 3rd. This event shocked the community, as you would expect. They did go ahead and crown the Queen and do things, but it was a sad moment in time for what usually is a day of celebration. And so, I think you've seen how things developed from a Sunday school in a grove to a park, and things evolved and finally settled down to what's kind of normal or what we usually expect. There was one year early that they built little stands around Davis Park, and I thought that was much like the food trucks of today. So I think we look back and there's a lot of things that the foundation for today was there. So Kevin will take over from here and bring you up to date.
We'll just do a few highlights in the interest of time here. After the tragedy in '66, they did it up big in '67 with the Nebraska Centennial. They leveraged on that, had shaving contests, and they also had awards of notable Nebraskans from the entire state. And there were 3 men there that day, Liam Tunks, Maury Webster, and Forrest Peterson. Forrest Peterson, and a couple years after that, was the commanding officer of the United States Enterprise aircraft carrier. And he retired at the rank of Vice Admiral. And we know that this was a big deal because you notice it's a Kearney Hub photo and it showed up on the front page of the Hub on July 5th. So that's pretty remarkable in and of itself that it was that big a deal, that it showed up in the Hub. 1969, we had a watermelon feed, and the scouts were going to help serve the watermelon feed. I was one of those scouts, and I have a personal memory from that one. We were going along slicing watermelon. I had a knife in my right hand, held the watermelon with my left, managed to slice all the way through the watermelon and got my finger. I still have the scar. Well, what happened after that is that the folks there told me, said, well, you're bleeding all over the place. You better go get cleaned up. So go across the street and talk to Miller about the thing. Well, Miller was Miller Goberson, who had the furniture store across the street, and he was our local undertaker. So they had me go see the undertaker about my finger. And that's a true story. He had a sink and all that. By that time, the slab wasn't in the basement, but he still had some plumbing. Let's see. Had a tractor pull first in 1970. We've had that every year since then, not necessarily on the 4th of July. 1971 was Gibbon's centennial, so we had the big whoop-de-doo that year on April 7th, so they had a children's parade instead of a full-blown parade. 1973, they instituted the tradition of having a grand marshal. It's the first one I saw for a grand marshal was 1973 as we do it today, and we've done it every year since that time. From 76 to 79, they labeled it as Buffalo Days, and 76 was part of the American Revolution Bicentennial. That was the year that the Gibbon Heritage Center was established. The Boot Hill Monument at Lowell was put in that year, and we buried a time capsule at the Gibbon Heritage Center, and the instruction on the stone says to be opened in 2026. And we hear more detail about that. Picture of the bicentennial folks. The reason I have this one here is it shows the smiley-faced water tower in the background. And back up here, the time capsule was such a big deal that Congresswoman Smith showed up for us. So we had Virginia Smith in town that day. Again, they had different themes for the parade and for the celebration. In 1982, it was Heart of Nebraska Agriculture. They used the slogan Smile City, and they took that from the smiley-faced water tower. And so Gibbon used the Smile City kind of motto or slogan, if you will. I guess slogan would be a better word for it. And still use some to this day. They used the water tower in some of their advertisements as well. And in 85, Congresswoman Smith showed back up again. So anyway, we talk about sometimes in Gibbon, since we're right on the way between Grand Island and Kearney on the interstate, as you're going west out of Lincoln to the western part of the state. We're at a convenient spot, and we'll have people just kind of stop by sometimes because it's on the way. And some people get a chuckle out of that, but it's actually true. That's Dan Clevenger that is shaking hands with her. Now you notice that they went all out with what they were expecting on the 4th of July in 1987. It said 4th of July activities offer a variety of events to please most. Okay, most, not all, but most. But in 1987, the Gibbon Band was the Grand Marshal. That year, at the Harvest of Harmony the previous fall, Gibbon's enrollment at that time was large enough they were a Class B school for a couple of years there. And that year they requested that they be moved up to Class A for the Harvest of Harmony parade competition. And they won first place in the Class A Harvest of Harmony parade competition in 1986. And then they were also the champion band in the North Platte, Nebraska Land Days. And they did that 4 years running. So the folks there in town thought it was be a good thing to honor the band since they were really tremendous. This was Gibbon's 125th. And we have a copy of that up here. Again, just another variation. Proud to be an American. This is from 2003. Bike ride tour again. Later on, flower shows, barbecue, dance, but did not have fireworks. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. In 2004, they had a celebration in town, but the Gibbon High School Band went to Washington, D.C. in 2004 to march in the Washington, D.C. 4th of July parade that year. Problem was, and I was a sponsor, Carol and I were sponsors, we got there, trip went fine, but on the 4th of July, it rained buckets and buckets and buckets. More rain than they'd seen in D.C. for I don't know how many decades. So they canceled the parade. And we had to sit there in wet uniforms or wet clothes inside a Smithsonian Museum to get out of the rain. They told us you can't go anywhere, you can't look at any of the exhibits, you just got to sit there cold and wet. And then they called it off. We stuck the flowered plumes in a bag, still wet, and it was just, I don't know how to describe it when we opened that bag back up and we got back together. Wet feathers that had been in there during the summer for a couple days. We don't have a lot of pictures of floats. This was one year that NCTC, which was the business our family ran, had its, what would have been that year, 90th anniversary that year. And so we went through the parade and again had kind of the usual stuff, ice cream bars and barbecue. This is 2021, Gibbon 150. And that year we sponsored some tours at Gibbon, and Elaine Battenhorst was the one who put together some of that information for us so we could do tours from Gibbon. And Elaine, if you don't know, is a Gibbon High School graduate. And
I should have brought you a picture when I marched in the parade.
well, we have pictures mostly from the newspapers. We don't have a lot of actual photos, and the newspaper photos in general they're hard to look at even if you're just looking straight at them, as opposed to being scanned. These more recent clippers, they've folded the reporter into the clipper, which is the Shelton paper, and these are what they call digitally born. In other words, they started as digitals and they printed off from that, so I was able to download the actual high-res stuff, and they've got that back to 2018 on the Clippers website. Okay. This is kind of a little laundry list of events over the years. So we had a PlayStation 2 tournament at the library one year, going again with the times. And then our grand marshals. Okay, I'll close here by saying that Gibbon has always tried to have a really bang-up time, pun intended, on the 4th of July. We saw the ad for the 1884 celebration. This is the report from the Beacon. And by the way, the Buffalo County Beacon was published in Gibbon from 1882 to 1898 and then moved to Elm Creek. And Gibbon Reporter was started in 1888 and continued on until late 2010s when it was folded in with the Clipper. But Beacon reported the 4th of July celebration was a grand success, and the only reason that we do not tell you more about it, that the local reporter took in so much of the celebration that he has not been good for anything since. And then in 2012, Smile City braces for 4th of July 4th events. So that's the conclusion of that. We have some prints of July 4th flyers, promotional flyers, and again, we've done the celebration up to this day. This is the insert out of the Clipper from just last year, where they have a number of pictures and the events and all that. So anyway, any questions?
Do you have anything special planned for this year,
Well,
or just the usual?
Well, I mean, we're gonna have a parade, and it's hard to know on the parade what's all gonna be in there because they don't require pre-registration. You show up, they'll give you a number, and you can be in the parade. That being said, it's always very well organized. The last I saw, they are still fully planning the events for this year, at least that's what was said in the paper. We did see that the Gibbon Parade is gonna be the official 4th of July parade for the county this year. I don't know what Shelton thinks about that, because Gibbon's parade's at 10 in the morning and Shelton's is at 2 in the afternoon. And it's done that way purposely so that if folks, like say the fire departments, the Shelton Fire Department could come over in the morning to be in the Gibbon parade, and then the Gibbon Fire Department can go over to Shelton in the afternoon and be in that parade. We are going to, can I go ahead and tell it, Gene? Yeah, on the 5th of July at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to be opening and unveiling the time capsule that was put in 1976, or not, yeah, 1976. But we're doing that on the 5th.
That's also our birthday party.
Oh, for the Heritage Center. Yeah, 50th anniversary of the Heritage Center. It was an American Revolution bicentennial project. So it's going to be our birthday party. We're going to open the time capsule. Like I said, it says literally etched in stone, open in 2026. And so we're doing that at 2 in the afternoon. We're not doing it on the 4th because there's enough other activities on the 4th. There are no fireworks in Gibbon. The last I saw that they did fireworks for sure was in 1981. And since that time, it's just been felt it's just a little too expensive. Or maybe a lot more expensive, a lot too expensive, or whatever you want to call it. So they have shows in Shelton to this day, and then the ones down here in Kearney. And you know, the one in Kearney, if it's over on the south edge of town, I can sit on my back porch and see it go up. So it can be seen. I live in Gibbon. Other than that, I really don't know for sure what the whole plan is. And we don't know who the Grand Marshal is publicly until that day. Until they line up in the parade route. They always round up, unless it's raining, a nice convertible for folks to ride in and that kind of thing, and they ride toward the front of the parade. And the parade order is typically the same. They start with the Legion Post, marching with the flags, followed by sometimes the veterans motorcycle riders. This year we're hoping that, and the plan is right now that Gene Hunt will bring a cannon over from Fort Kearney and ride it through the parade. Our parade's at 10, and Gene fires off the cannon at 2. So he was thinking it was close enough that we could bring that over and do that. So hopefully that'll work out for that. I've talked to Gene about that. And let's see, what was I going to say? Oh, and then various cars, local businesses, the occasional politician, especially this year, although it'll be after the primary, but before the general. And then equestrians are at the end. We always make sure the equestrians are at the end of the parade. That way we don't have to try to keep up with it as they go through the parade and have scoopers along the parade. It's just for logistics purposes. So there's usually a few equestrian type groups. Okay, like I said, there's some displays up here, and